Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever hit a wall with a problem that just seems to twist your brain into a total knot? Well, today we're unlocking a powerful mental tool that can make some of the trickiest puzzles surprisingly simple. It's all about flipping your perspective and starting from the end. Take a look at this one. It's a classic brain twister, right? If you try to solve it the usual way, starting from the beginning, well, you quickly get tangled up in fractions and what-ifs. It's enough to make your head spin. But what if I told you there's a much more elegant, almost magical way to solve this? Instead of trying to bash our way through the front door, we're going to sneak in through the back.
So here's our game plan. First, I'm going to let you in on the secret. Then we'll warm up with a pretty simple pastry puzzle just to see how it all works. After that, we'll circle back and totally conquer that money mystery. And then I'll hand the reins over to you for one last challenge.
Okay, so what is this big secret? It's a strategy called working backward. Think of it as your secret weapon for a very specific type of problem. You know, the kind where a bunch of stuff happens in a sequence and you only know how it all turned out in the end. Basically, it's for when you know the final destination, but you need to figure out the starting point. It's kind of like being a detective who shows up at a crime scene. You see the result, and you have to work backward to figure out exactly what happened to get there. And the process is just beautifully simple. First, you plant your flag at the end result. That's the one piece of information you know for sure. Second, you retrace the steps of the story, but you do it in reverse order. And third, for every single step, you just reverse the math. So if the story says something was subtracted, you add it back. If it was divided, you multiply. You're literally just hitting the undo button on the problem. You know, the best way to really get this is to just see it in action. So let's walk through a simpler puzzle together and get the hang of it. Okay, here's our practice run. Dolores and her pastries. Again, if we start at the beginning with some pastries, we're already kind of lost. But we know exactly how many she had at the end. And that, my friends, is our key. Step one, we start at the end. We know for a fact she was left with 2 pastries. That's our anchor. That's our starting number for the solution. All right, now we reverse the journey. We rewind the tape. What was the very last thing that happened right before she had those 2 pastries? She ate one. And here's where we do step 3, reverse the math. The opposite of eating 1 pastry is, well, you add it back. So we take our 2 pastries, we add 1, and boom. That means she must have had 3 pastries right before she ate that last one. Okay, let's keep rewinding, take another step back in time. Before she ate that pastry, she gave one to her brother. And the reverse of giving one away is, you guessed it, adding it back. So we take the 3 pastries we had on the last step, add back the one she gave her brother, and now we know she had 4. See how we're building the number back up, piece by piece? We're at the final step of our reverse journey. This was the very first thing she did. She gave half of her original pastries away to her friends. So how do we reverse giving half away, which is really just dividing by 2? We multiply by 2. We take our running total of 4, we double it, and we get 8. And there it is, the answer. By working backward, we know with total confidence that Dolores started with 8 pastries. This just perfectly shows how a confusing problem can become a simple series of calculations. So cool. All right, the warm-up is over. Now it's time to face that money mystery from the beginning. But this time, with our new technique, it really doesn't stand a chance. Okay, this table lays out our entire backwards journey. Let's walk through it together. We start at the bottom with the one thing we know for sure. She ended with $40. Now, what happened right before that? She deposited 2/3 of her money. Now, this part's a little tricky, but think about it. If she deposited 2/3, that means the $40 she had left over was the other 1/3, right? So to get the full amount back, we just multiply by 3. 40 times 3 is $120. Okay, next step back. Before that, she loaned out 1/5 of her money. That means the $120 we just calculated must be the 4/5 she kept. To reverse that, we multiply by 5 over 4. 120 times 5/4 gets us to $150. Almost there. And the very first thing she did, spent $25. The reverse of spending is adding. So we take our 150 and add back that 25. Which brings us to our final answer, $175. The problem that seemed so complicated just a few minutes ago is now solved with some really straightforward arithmetic. That is the power of starting at the end. So now you have this amazing tool in your problem-solving kits. You've seen how to take a confusing sequence of events and just unravel it by reversing the flow. And that's really the big takeaway here. It's not just about math puzzles. When you're faced with a complex chain of events, sometimes the absolute clearest path to understanding is to start with the results and work your way back to the cause. And now it's your turn. Here's a new challenge for you. We've got Yolanda on a staircase. You know where she ended up, on the very first step. So can you work backward from there to find out which step is the middle one? Feel free to pause and give it a shot.
And as a final thought, think bigger than just math. When you're planning a big project, right, you often start with the final deadline and work backward to set your milestones. When you're trying to debug a computer problem, you start with the error and trace it back to its source. So where else in your life could starting at the end lead you to the beginning of a solution?